So here I have the Watercolor Artist Guide to Colour, a visual guide to choosing and using colour to bring your paintings to life by Richard Taylor. Now this was recently published in 2024 by David and Charles. It has 128 pages and it's a softback. Now I really did not need another book on colour. I love colour, I love reading about colour, I love colour mixing, but I have other books by Richard that I really quite enjoyed reading. So I have another book on colour. And the other reason I got it is I think it would be a brilliant book as a refresher book, or for anyone who's completely new to colour. I'm going to cover that. We're not going to look at this brush with the bristles down in the water. This is an experienced artist. We're assuming here that this is just for the colour effect, because obviously that's very damaging to your brushes. Anyway, we're going to ignore that and we're going to talk about the contents. A World of Colour, Part 1, Watercolour Basics, Pigment and Water, Creating Dimension. Part 2, Paints and Colours, Paint Types, Greys and Neutrals, Colour Families, Yellows, Reds and Blues. Part 3, Light and Shade, the 3 stages, Reflected Colour and Still Life Studies. Part 4, Warm and Cold, the theory, Still Life Studies. Part 5, Colour in Action, and we have sketchbook studies, irises and sunflowers. Then we've got some final thoughts about the author, thanks and index. So we start off with A World of Colour, with a little bit of history, how modern colour was developed and about the book. Again, we'll ignore the brush down, but you can see this was obviously done for the artistic effect, and I myself love to drop colour into water and watch it, and that is very pretty. So we have the Watercolour Basics, Pigment and Water. So we have paint, pigments, tonal diagrams, reading the rings and the colour wheel. Creating Dimension, and I think the way this is done, it shows it very clearly. So you also have your written instructions there. And it's nice that it shows an example in a finished painting. Part 2, Paints and Colours. Now this talks about paint types. So we start with modern synthetic colours, synthetic inorganic colours, natural organic colours and natural earth colours. So when you start out you probably do not have an idea what all of this means, but it's explained. Everything in this book is explained. And then we have more about natural earth colours and creating texture. I love this, using granulation, light to dark and tones and texture. And then we move on to greys and neutrals. Now grey can be a very confusing colour to use, but we have different shades of grey. And we've got mixing with colours, using a neutral tint. That's a lovely section, so nicely explained in here. And then we move on to the colour families with the theory, mixing, and then we have our 3 main yellows, blues and reds, and we've got the different sections on the colour wheel there. And then I love this, the sunflowers, colour families, yellow paints, so it tells you the different types of yellow that you're likely to come across, lights and darks, and colours for mixing, how to mix yellow and red, how to mix the right colour, and darkening. And then you've got an example here of some peppers. Then we move on to reds. So again we go through all the characteristics, the mixing and the using the colour, finding the right colour, darkening, lovely examples here. And we have a final painting. Then we move on to the blues. And overall, I mean, I love the backgrounds as well. It's so lovely to see all the different shades being used. So again, we start off with the different shades of blue that you may find, different pigments. and we work through as with the other two colours. And then we have a final painting. And then part 3, light and shades. So the 3 stages of light and shade, and creating shadows, reflected colour, still life studies, another brush, part 4, warm and cold. Again, it's a pretty colour. I can see why they've done it. The theory, still life studies here again. Very nice. And then we have part 5, colour in action, and the sketchbook studies. We've got irises there. Sunflowers. Lovely, beautiful finished painting. And then we move on to some final thoughts about the author and the index. So I think that is a lovely book for someone who doesn't really know anything about colour, doesn't know about colour mixing, about the pigments, all the different colour families. This would be a wonderful book to start out with. And even if you maybe have looked at other books and you've still struggled a little bit with colour, this really is a beautiful book. It's one of those books I just find so lovely. The actual colour that's used in there, it's just very welcoming and warm. It's a book where I can just flick through and I can stop and read anywhere I want to and just absorb the information. So that's the Watercolour Artist Guide to Colour by Richard Taylor.